Hello, and welcome to episode 328 of the Crate and Crowbar, a PC gaming podcast recorded on the 17th of June, 2020. I'm Marsh Davis, and I'm joined this evening by Alex Wiltshire.
Hello.
And Chris Thurston.
Hello.
What's the news?
I was interested to read within the last few days of a really weird thing on Steam that's been going on. Something that I do not have any answers to at all, but it's a phenomenon which is odd. So there's a game that came out called AI Ball, which came out. Let me check. It came out according to the Steam page all the way back in June 2016, and it looks a bit like Gang Beasts, except that you're playing football. And I believe very few people bought it, but it existed. But then sometime last year, the people who did buy it saw that it updated. And when they tried to load it, the game changed. What they now had was a game called Penguin Cretins, which was not AI Ball at all. Penguin Cretins, I looked at a video on YouTube of it, and it's a sort of a crappy, very crappy looking sort of side runnery game, somewhat physicsy. It has nothing to do with AI Ball, and people got upset about it because it wasn't the game they bought, and they complained about it, and then finally last week it was changed back again to AI Ball. And nobody has said anything about it. But it's been described as being some sort of scam. But it's a scam that I do not understand in any way. Because, well, the people who did it had to make two games in order to do the scam.
Right.
Their game that came out second, so Penguin Cretins, became free to everybody, so it's not like they got extra sales on an old game that people had already done their buying on. So would it have gained more page impressions because it was an established game? Maybe
they're trying to sell Penguin Cretins 2 to EA, and they needed to prove that there was a substantial audience for the Penguin Cretins franchise. Therefore, they just created the Penguin Cretins audience out of the AI Ball audience and then switched it back as soon as they snapped up that hot deal.
Maybe that's it.
That's my guess.
Yeah.
Definitely wrong.
There's some conjecture from one of the reviewers on AI Ball who complained, don't buy. I bought in 2016 a game called AI Ball. They wonder whether it's a way of publishing a new game without having to go the proper process of publishing a game on Steam. But these days, that doesn't. You can put as many games you like up on Steam once you're in through the doors. You've paid your $100, whatever it is.
Could it not have just been a really bad fuck up? Like, I've accidentally pressed publish and replaced my game with a different game.
No, we've lost AI Ball.
Right,
new game.
they press save rather than save as, and now AI Ball is Penguin Cretins. I must know, what is Penguin Cretins?
I mean, it appeared to be like this side-on sort of physicsy racery game where you're looking at this kind of sort of stunty style obstacle course, and you're a penguin, presumably stupid, but yeah, that's all I know because it's gone now.
That's real weird. That's a really weird.
But apparently that's not the only one. There's been another one. I'm going to just look it up. There's been a few other games doing this as well. There was a Tale of Fortune, a game called Tale of Fortune, began life as a voxel-style pirate adventure, but then was code-swapped for an adults-only hentai game. An online battle royale shooter called Epic Royal, would that be Royale? But it's no E. Epic Royal was previously an open-world survival game called Integrity, and a retro arcade, and a retro arcade game called Back to the 80s morphed it from a side-scrolling shooter titled Cthulhu. So,
This
odd.
there must be a thing.
It's got to be some way of duking the impenetrable Steam algorithm, but I can't immediately see how that would work in this case.
Yeah.
It's maybe just by having existing sales, they expect that their new game would get granted more visibility in some way.
Maybe.
Could it be the review quantity? Like that's
Could be. But there's barely any. There's like AI Ball was a really obscure game. Like there's nothing there.
Yeah.
You know.
Right.
You'd expect it would be prejudiced against games which had been around for a long time, hadn't sold well, and didn't have many reviews in a long time. But
Here's a theory. Maybe it's a really dodgy publisher who's grabbing games from developers, saying that they're going to publish them on Steam. They put them up on Steam, and say, "Hey, look, we've got sales of your game," and then it's a scam against the developer. Maybe. Still don't understand the shape of that.
But it's sort of, given that it's not necessarily that hard, as has been said, to get a game on Steam now. Like, 'cause the only thing I think is like, what if you temporarily needed a functioning Steam link for a game for a bit for some reason? Or like the ability to generate keys for a limited amount of time in order to then sell them to someone else would be like, like to pull a shitload of keys out and sell them to some, dodgy kind of key reseller, maybe. Like that's, I don't know. I'm struggling to articulate what the crime is really. Like, it sounds bad, but yeah,
mysterious, probably a crime.
If it tastes like crime, but what is its shape?
What is shape?
Have you got any crime-shaped news, Chris?
Well, I'll start with not a crime, and then we'll see. So actually, I wanted to mention Steam is doing a sort of summer demo extravaganza, whose name I've forgotten at the moment, where you can get demos for lots of games and the streams and things showing them off. And I just wanted
for a week.
For a week, is this going to still be running when this podcast goes live? Yeah,
I think so.
But I did want to say that the demo for the game that Pip is working on with Alan Hazelden, A Monster's Expedition, is available through this scheme. And just do a plug, basically. You should play it. It's very lovely.
Very excited to play it.
But
again, what is okay? This is another Steam mystery. What is in it for developers that this is time limited? Why would that be a good thing?
I suppose it does focus attention on
really
demos.
Attention.
Like, I quite like these sort of like demo rush weeks. Actually, it's probably quite a good way of getting people to actually try stuff, which has got risks associated with it. I suspect also it might be quite a good play testing and feedback resource, given that no one is going to Res or GDC or any of the other places where indie devs particularly get access to an audience who don't necessarily already want the game.
I did just acquire 1,700 new games though this last week.
Right.
So
yeah.
Not that they could have predicted that necessarily at the time they were putting this together, but still.
There's that.
I still did actually. I have played one game. I didn't realize that the Alan and Pip's one is out, so I'll check that out. But I played XO1, which I've had my eye on for quite a while now. Earlier on this evening, which is it's like Tiny Wings, but in 3D in weird weird sci-fi land. Do you know what I'm?
I do. I've been in I've had access to the beta for a fair while now.
Oh, have you?
Really?
Because Jay Weston, who is the developer of the game, is a lovely man. Because I remember seeing that game for the first time, I think in the Left Field at Res a couple of years ago now, and really, really liking it. And it's a good Kubrickian marble adventure.
It is. One of the things it's like, just to explain it, you are a ballie and you do rollies, and when you go up a hill and you've got sufficient speed, your ballie go flying in the air, but then you can click the mouse button, hold the mouse down, and then you plummet, gaining more speed, and you use the topography of the rolly kind of landscape in order to basically fly as much as you can. You can glide, and you can kind of steer yourself around, and there are weird beacons to follow, but it feels really nice. But one of the things I really enjoyed, and it looks lovely, and it's got lovely film grain and washes of color and things, but and light and kind of haze and fog and things. But the sound effects are just amazing. You hear when you're sort of scraping along the ground or rolling along the ground, you can hear bits of dust and stones hitting your sphere, little crackly sounds, and you swoosh up into the air. Oh, it's lovely, lovely, lovely.
It's really nice. I like it a lot. I'm looking forward to spending more time with it, actually. I've only played a couple of hours of it lately in the most recent version. Yeah, it's real nice. I could talk about another bit of space news, if you'll forgive me.
Please.
So I appreciate this is slightly old news at this point, but there's been a ton of announcements about what going to happen with Destiny over the next couple of years. And while a lot of it is, chiefly of interest to Destiny players who will already know all of this stuff, I do think there's some interesting stuff in there about some of the practicalities of running one of these sort of kind of increasingly high fidelity MMOs, basically, in the modern era. And so the long and short of it is and I appreciate this is going to come from a person who is traditionally a bit of an apologist for Bungie and Destiny, that I love that game very much. It's one of my favorites, and I've gotten a lot out of it. And I've always had a lot of sympathy for Bungie's position, and I have, at least some ability to understand the kind of pressure that developers find themselves under, both in these current working conditions and also generally running a live game isn't easy. So I'm usually so to criticize. And so that is the heavy caveat I'm putting in front of the fact that the last season of the game, the last 3 months, as the game is divided up, was a train wreck. It was every unforced error you can imagine. It was just like, it was kind of shocking. And it got to the point where towards the end, I was genuinely like, this is the, if my relationship with the game was a health bar, this is the lowest it's ever been in the 5 years I've been playing Destiny games. And just thing after thing that they didn't need to get as wrong as they did. They tried to do a sort of in-game Olympics where all the classes faced off against each other in a competition. It didn't work because of some fairly predictable player incentivization stuff that meant that after the first day, it simply wasn't a competition. It was obvious who was going to win, and they won. They did I could get into all of this, but I won't, because I'll bore people to death. But they tried to launch a kind of a big community-driven collective effort to unlock a new weapon quest for everybody. And this was about doing a public event, like an open world event, 1 million times or 3 million times across the entire Destiny player base. And they'd obviously calculated this based on how much they thought it would take. But they did this like 2 months into the season when everyone was already really bored of that event. And they did it immediately after making the event much harder, so that average groups couldn't do it in an environment where the matchmaking didn't work. So they had to humiliatingly keep making it easier until the players finally did it, because players always also data mined that, like, what the weapon was going to be and the cosmetics they were going to sell for it and all the rest of it. So there was no doubt that we had to succeed. But then the community was like, well, what if we don't? Like, what if we just don't do this? That happened. Then, so they said, like, well, we'll just have to keep moving the bar until you do it, because we planned for you to do it. Then they decided to wrap the season up with a sort of the first like in-game live event. And they have been pushing this idea that everyone would benefit from having some kind of this sort of FOMO stuff where if you weren't there at the time, you don't get to see it. And I think this is a really bad fit for Destiny personally, which has always had this balance between being a multiplayer game and also shoot away you're the protagonist. So having stuff that just happens, and if you weren't there, fuck you, doesn't feel right. But all this collective effort involves setting up a big AI so it can shoot lots of missiles at a bad spaceship that's going to crash into the Earth. And this culminated in a live event where they'd said this is how it's going to end, where you could log in at a particular time and watch the thing, plummet into the atmosphere and watch the big spectacular skybox event, basically, as a community. And I was actually kind of looking forward to this, because I was sort of in this mood for like, well, this season has really sucked, but I have so much goodwill for this game that I kind of want that moment at the end where you all kind of stand together in the community and everyone's jumping around and doing emotes, and you watch the big spectacular fireworks show, basically the sort of Fortnite style live event. and end the season on a bang, and great. We'll just sort of say goodbye to it on a high note. And so the event ended up happening at 4 p.m., 6 p.m. on Saturday, a week and a half ago now. And obviously this would have been planned very carefully, the time zones to make sure it matches up with the bulk of the player base, the fact that it's a Saturday afternoon, so more people are going to be free. Guess when they announced it, the time?
Very shortly before.
Yeah, they announced it. They announced it 24 hours before on Twitter and about 20 minutes before in-game. And so I missed it. I missed it. And it was just like, because I don't follow Destiny on Twitter, I barely use Twitter, and I happened to be playing the game that morning. And when you log in, it will often do a pop-up to say, like, here's what's happening in the game.
Yeah,
but they didn't add that. Yeah, they didn't add that pop-up until about 20 to 45 minutes before the event happened. And I had already logged off for the day. And it's like, you don't have, like, people like me could point to all the technical reasons for other things going wrong. That one's just weird. Yeah. That one's just like, were they worried about server load? So there's like, we prepared this live event, but we're not going to tell you. Like, it was just really strange. So anyway,
wasn't it really late when it came to it as well?
No, it wasn't late. What they didn't communicate was that there's a wind up. So the event took basically, like, it was like an hour of watching this thing get closer and closer in the sky and watching missiles streak towards it extremely slowly, and then like a couple of minutes of like explosions and action at the end. And that's often how these things work. Like in MMOs, there's often quite a lot of waiting around the event because you want to give people a grace period to arrive, to hear that it's happening and log in. You also want to account for the fact that people might kind of disconnect. You have this settling time. They've said since that they will want to give a better sense of how long they can expect to wait for the sort of action to take place. But they describe it as the equivalent, and I kind of agree with this from having run similar things, albeit in a much more indie context, like to, if you go to a gig, doors are at 7, but that doesn't mean the band is on at 7. Like you say, when the event, when to be in position, and then you can expect to wait half an hour for the actual action to take place. Anyway, that was and then the other thing is, normally they would announce the next season like a couple of weeks in advance. There'd be a trailer and stuff like that. They did none of that. They didn't release the name of the season. And so there's this weird feeling coming out of this series of mistakes that, like, is it over? Like, are they going to do anything? Like, what's going to happen? And then there's this big reveal event, which is really well put together, actually, for a bunch of different reasons. They did a really nice little documentary about how they've adapted to working from home and some of the pressures involved in that. And that's good, I think. It's obviously very positive about them, but also I think it's good for players to become more aware of the pressures that does put on companies, and that it's not business as usual, and have some empathy and things like that. And that's very positive. They did a countdown to the beginning of the live stream, but then began the live stream with a further 8-minute and 46-second countdown, which just promoted people to go and inform themselves about the Black Lives Matter movement, which I thought was an appropriate way of acknowledging 8 minutes and 46 seconds being the the amount of time that George Floyd's neck was kneeled on. And like that I thought was like a way of addressing, bridging the thing that's very tricky for everybody at the moment, I think, in games marketing and games generally, of addressing frivolous things, and while acknowledging the enormity of things that are happening in the world more broadly. That was all good. And then they just sort of rolled out with a trailer for a new expansion called Beyond Light, which is coming in September. And then they announced the expansion for the year after that, which is called The Witch Queen. And then they announced the expansion for the year after that, which is called Lightfall. And used this as a way of hammering home the fact that Destiny 3 is definitely not happening. That they're going to continue to expand Destiny 2. And the thing that I think was really interesting, because it's always interesting when developers have to give bad news, is addressing a problem that they've increasingly had, which is, Destiny is a high fidelity game with very detailed environments. And the size of the game has gone up by about 25 gig a year ever since it's come out. And it's not sustainable. It's barely, you'd say it was barely sustainable for people's PCs. Call of Duty Warzone absolutely takes the piss in this regard. It's up to like 200 odd gig at this point, because even if you only want to play for the free-to-play Warzone thing, you have to download every addition to the single-player campaign and the other multiplayer modes that you don't own, which is completely fucking nuts. But they don't want this thing to become this sort of multi-hundred gig behemoth people's hard drives. It also makes it very hard to create builds of the game, and it creates problems on the consoles, even the new generation of consoles. It push up against manufacturer-imposed limits and stuff. And so what they're doing is just vaulting a shitload of content. Basically, at the end in September this year, 4 or 5 of Destiny's planets are just going away, and almost all of the content from the first year of Destiny 2, including the Destiny 2 campaign, just won't be playable anymore.
Bloody hell.
Which is really interesting, because that's a good initial reaction, Alex. And is this the first you're hearing of this?
No, see, this is the thing. This is the interesting thing, because they, like, Bungie have a way of speaking, and this way of speaking is about appearing grandiose and skilled and wise and remarkable, and I scanned it and didn't really pay that much attention, because I've been off the old Destiny for quite a while now, and I've just been on other things, and I just wasn't paying that much attention. And I came away with the impression, like, oh yeah, that sounds like a good thing. Yeah, archiving, that sounds really good. Like, because it's in an archive, so it's like it's archived, so that's good. And that's and now you're rephrasing it, and it's saying, I'm going, bloody hell.
Yeah.
It's archived. You can't play it in an archive.
You can't. And they're doing some other interesting things. Like, they're basically saying that they put it in a box and it might come back in the future. But also everything from Destiny 1 is in that box. So they're actually bringing back a bunch of Destiny 1 stuff this year, which would be interesting because people on the PC never chance to play it. But what I think there's 2 things that are interesting about this. One is the principle itself. Like, other MMOs haven't had to do this, but also other MMOs don't have quite the same fidelity or kind of
there's a constancy as well. Like, you know, as a Destiny player, you do zip in and out of old content all the time in a way that you don't in most MMOs. Like, MMOs, you can generally tell, you can gauge how many people are going to go back to old areas, because it's just going to be a tiny proportion of the audience, and it's usually new players.
The one thing I will say, though, is that Bungie have always had really good data on what players do. Like, they've done this since Halo. And like, they did say that there's stuff that's taking up gigs and gigs of space that less than 0.3% of the player population ever do. So that's a lot of the stuff that's going away, but it's also a lot of stuff that's going away. And I think you're right. Like, there's a broad point. I think it's definitely been pointed over the last couple of months. Bungie's communication style is really weird, and sometimes they really nail it. And I think this presentation was good. But sometimes the slightly arch way of it's not always grandiose. It's just sort of performative in a way that I don't think is very effective often. Particularly for the bulk of players, but that's getting into the kind of like comms theory side of this, which I can know it's of interest to us, but from a player's point of view, the other way I was thinking about this, and it's kind of interesting because other MMOs, people don't expect to lose access to stuff, and that's super complicated, and I don't know if it's ever going to be comfortable for people. And the flip side is that at this point in Destiny 1's life, Destiny 2 came out and effectively rendered all of Destiny 1, including the expansion that was only 6 months old, basically irrelevant. And with, a one-way character transition between the two. And so this is the equivalent of only removing the first 2 years of Destiny 1. You know what I mean? And so it's sort of interesting. I mean, maybe just interesting to me, but it's sort of both as a technical necessity and a weird thing to have to consider, like making your game smaller so that you can keep updating it, because makes more sense as a business. But yeah, I don't know. And I'm really interested to see the kind of reaction this gets as it looms closer and it becomes real for more people. Because the other thing that I've been thinking about recently is, Fortnite, I think it's done it very recently, blows up its world and reinvents itself all the time. And I think, I wonder as we increasingly move away from a kind of boxed, I own this and therefore how dare you change it, attitude towards game ownership, towards more that this is a phenomena and I mean, I hate the word service, but like this is a little world I log into with my friends, and it changes all the time, and I don't always get to do everything.
It's the private. I think Fortnite is a private space. That's how I see it. It's like going into a shopping center. You don't own this place, so they can do what they like with it, but they'll put on a show for you because they want you there.
Yeah, exactly.
Whereas kind of Destiny is, you kind of thought it was private because you bought it, but it isn't, because they just sold your house from underneath you.
Yeah,
and
it's definitely an awkward transition. I don't think it's going to be smooth at all, but I just wonder how it will go down with different audiences, particularly a younger audience, which has grown up with this. I mean, maybe it's very pertinent that at the moment, teenagers aren't going to hang out in shopping centers; they are hanging out on Fortnite.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
And so, yeah.
And I think that the moment that they nail these public events, as in letting people know about it ahead of time, making sure that they're suitably dramatic throughout, not just at the very end, a very long, quiet, slow sequence,
Do you know what they need to do? Because obviously the most spectacular use of this in Fortnite was for a concert. They need to get giant holographic Paul McCartney to do his awful Destiny song.
I'm down
but
with that.
Like in the sky, crooning to the Traveler or something above the tower. Like they've taken the piss out of that song a couple of times in Destiny 2, because I don't know why they did it, and it's one of the weirdest marketing things that's ever happened. Have you heard the Paul McCartney's Destiny song? Marsh?
Yeah.
Sadly, yes.
Okay, yeah. So if they don't leverage that, I don't understand what they're doing.
Do you know what?
Am I going to have to include this in the show notes just to punish listeners?
Yeah. I would. I'd visit Eververse for that.
Hell yeah!
Are you listening, Bungie? I'd go to Eververse for that.
Bless them. Well, and so that's my update on how they're doing. That's all I've got to say about that.
What have you been playing, Marty?
I've been playing so many games. I've been playing through the games that were in the Black Lives Matter Itch.io bundle, based on recommendations of more learned people than myself, such as Tom Francis, who last week recommended Wide Open Big Jacket, which is absolutely fantastic. It's one of the nicest, warm-hearted games, incredibly funny. I thought very playful. That was excellent. Another game was Ethereal, which was recommended by John Walker on his website Buried Treasure, which has been doing a really good job of digging out some of the gems from the bundle, and that's sort of the website's purpose in general. And Ethereal is this really strange puzzle game. You sort of control this orb, which is fixed to a sort of 2D matrix of abstract shapes. And the puzzle it's basically a navigation problem, how to get from this part of this maze of weird shapes to another, but while obeying really abstract, odd rules for movement, which are that you can move completely freely along this horizontal axis wherever you are until you hit a wall, but you can only move up and down by hopping over walls which are vertically adjacent to you. And so much of the game is just about sort of rewiring your brain to parse this sort of chaotic looking level for routes that work with these rules. And then it gets more complicated as it lets you reposition walls and use things which fire you off to other parts of the game. But it's very strange. It's very weird. I recommend it. And the third game I've been playing is also a recommendation by nice game journalist man, Chris Schilling, who recommended Signs of the Sojourner. I don't know, have you heard of this one?
Oh, yeah.
I've heard of, don't know anything.
Well, it's somewhere between a visual novel and a deck building game. But each conversation that you have in the game is essentially the game of cards that you play, and it's quite a clever metaphor, the way that they've set up the mechanics of the card game to work. I don't think it is very entirely successful, but it's clever. So the overall premise is sort of less interesting to me than that mechanic, but it's set in this sort of colorful, cartoony, post apocalyptic world. Humanity's technologically regressed. It's living in these sort of dispersed settlements in the ruins of the old world, and you own a shop. And in order to gain items to sell in the shop, you need to join this roaming caravan, which goes between various settlements, and so you can pick up wares to take back to your shop and sell. And along the way, you sort of get into scrapes and uncover mysteries and learn about your mother, who preceded you in this career. And you're also a fox. No idea why. No one else is a fox, but you are a fox. I guess it's okay to be a fox. Why not?
A humanoid fox or like a fox?
You're a fox that could be involved in romantic relationships. So a humanoid one, I would imagine.
I like your criteria. Your criteria is quite revealing. I don't know of what exactly, but
narratively, it hasn't really grabbed me yet. But I'm quite early on. But anyway, the point of this is that the conversations are really quite interesting. So your deck is you don't actually have, well, you sort of do have dialogue conversations, but the majority of the conversation is abstracted completely through the process of playing cards from your deck. And your deck is made up of these cards which sort of represent conversational gambits. So at the start, this means that you have cards which have a colored dot on the left and they have a colored dot on the right. And your conversational partner will place a card, and then you try to place a card next to it which matches the color on the adjacent side of their card. It's like dominoes, exactly like dominoes, except with colored dots rather than multiple, numbers of dots. And when you place enough cards in sequence, you sort of reach like this conversational checkpoint, and a little bit of dialogue pops up, which represents like a positive outcome for that conversation. Or actually, positive is not the right word. It's more like a concordant outcome. So if you fail to match a color, the chain you built will be broken, and you will get I was going to say, again, not necessarily a bad conversational beat, but a discordant one. So the other person will be offended or confused or sad. Now, those colored dots represent certain personality types, or archetypes even. So different characters have different composites of them in their deck, depending on what kind of person they are. Like you might imagine an empathic character will have lots of green dots, or a creative character will have more pink dots, etc. And part of the game is, or at least it should be, but isn't quite, about seeing what sort of character a person is and then modifying your playstyle to get the sort of hand which will give you the best chance of reaching concordance with them. But it's not, so to go back to that concordance positive thing, it's not really about like winning a conversation. You're not always, it turns out sometimes it's better to actively seek discordance with people. And this is where like the whole card game as a metaphor for conversation really works, because you see you aren't necessarily getting the result you want from a conversation that goes well. You've simply been incredibly agreeable to the other person. And so, for example, like you meet a character really early on the game who I don't know if this is a bad character, incidentally, because I just chose to go down a different route. But he gave me kind of bad vibes. Like he sort of negs you a bit, and he's just over familiar, and he's kind of slightly bullying, and he's trying to get you to do something, and it just felt really off. But I nonetheless sort of thought I'd aced the conversation with him because I had made all these concordant sequences of cards, and I realized I hadn't aced it at all. I completely fucked it because I just completely capitulated to what he wanted. And in fact, the mechanics of it, or rather his use of the mechanics of it, had made it very difficult for me to refuse what he wanted, because he was trying to steer the conversation into a result he wanted, and he had cards which sort of allowed him to see my hand, and so he was essentially able to stack his own deck to make it difficult for me to, in inverted commas, fail the conversation game. And that it really nails the feeling of agreeing to something you really didn't want to agree to, but were too weak-willed to say no, which is an experience I have a frustrating amount in my life.
Yeah, I mean, I'm speaking for myself there. Christ. Really.
But yeah, so that's the only time it's really hit that note. I don't know if later in the game there are sort of other social phenomena that it somehow manages to express through this mechanics, but that particular thing was really extraordinarily neat, I thought. But there's sort of ways in which it falls down for me. I think first, like fundamentally, I don't think its character archetypes make really any sense. They sort of seem to be like a combination of different adjectives that don't necessarily sit together. So like one archetype is empathetic and observant, and another is logical and diplomatic. And like I don't really know what that means, because like people who are super logical, I know quite a few of them, and most of them are not very diplomatic at all.
Yeah, right.
And so I don't really know that you could look at those archetypes and just map them onto characters and say, that's a guy who's going to be logical and diplomatic, because I don't really think those two things often go together. And there's sort of, and the other issue, there's no real opportunity for you to strategize. The game just doesn't give you space to do it, really, about how to tackle a particular conversational partner.
Right.
Unless you meet them multiple times, because you don't really know what they're about until you've talked to them.
Are you creating your deck as you play?
Well, yes, but I mean, this is also the other problem, is that there's not much you can do to manipulate your deck of cards. You don't have many cards altogether. I think there's 10 at the beginning, at least. I don't know if you gain more later on. And you do learn new cards periodically, but then you have to discard one of your existing ones.
Right.
And so unless you want to sort of intentionally lock out conversational options, like unless you say, okay, I'm never going to have a card which has a green dot on the left and a blue dot on the right. And that means that you can just never respond to certain conversational partners. And so maybe it's, and so you end up just, well, at least I do end up hedging your bets and getting this sort of a deck which has at least one card which reflects every option, and then that's it. Then you never really change that. And I guess what the game is trying to do is you got to be a certain
personality kind of thing.
Yes, exactly. I think it's making you trying to set out your stall and say, I accept that I'm not going to get along with these types of characters, but I just don't know that that's really how it feels. Like how conversations work, how you grow as a social person. Like I just don't think, as a traveling salesperson, I'm not just going to go, fuck creative people. I hate creative people. I do not have the social articulacy to deal with creative people. So from now on, I will make them all my enemies. I mean, maybe people do that, but generally, I don't know. Generally, I think as you learn more about people, you get better at dealing with them, even if you dislike them.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's weird. The one last thing, but I'm sort of uncomfortable about defining my character in that way, because the archetypes also don't make sense to me. Like, I think if I knew more about what they really meant, I'd be okay sort of saying, okay, my character is, creative and empathetic. But because they are sort of vague, I just don't really know what I'm shaping my character to be, and I don't really want to lock myself irrevocably down to this set of behaviors which I just can't really identify with. But yeah. Anyway, it's a really interesting game.
I've been meaning to play it, but it's interesting you should bring it up, because the game I've been playing this week is Griftlands from Clay.
Oh yeah,
Clay. Which is also a conversational, or half of it is a conversational card game, but it's much more mechanical, and much less interested in personalities, and more about, hey, what can you, what abstract stuff can we do with conversations that we can reflect with cards? It's really interesting, and I know Tom has talked about it on the pod in the past. So I'll be kind of quite brief, and I also haven't played more than maybe 2 or 3 hours of it, so I'm really not sure what's happening yet. But this game is an RPG. Actually, Signs of Sojourner, is it like a on rails story, or are you kind of is it more open RPG? How's it all structured?
There is some freedom to where you go and who you talk to, and there's obviously some amount of branching in it. I don't know that it really opens up that much. I haven't gone far enough into it to tell.
Yeah. So Griftlands is a full RPG, wandering around the world, and it's the world is represented on a map, and you can walk to places where there are quests or story things that happen. But in each of these locations, there are all these characters, and they will give you quests. And you will go on these quests, and in order to succeed at them, you will get into situations in which you will either fight, which is one of the forms of cards that you'll play, or negotiate, which is the conversational side, which is the other half of the game. And as you play, you are constantly sort of manipulating the relationships you have with people, which gives you various benefits, boons, and also if they end up hating you, which the game is engineered to do. So sometimes you'll get into a situation where you have to choose one person over the other, and one person will like you and the other person will now hate you. And once they really hate you, you'll get negative stuff that you have to cope with during the rest of the game. But if you get people to really like you, you'll get these kind of permanent benefits. So you're kind of doing all this stuff while also collecting cards, and also going to bed at night so that you're replenishing your health and your resolve, which is kind of the terms in this game. This is what I kind of found the first kind of road hump over. So a lot of people are used to card games on computers where where you're like Hearthstone or Slay the Spire, where you've got a health value which you're trying to protect, and you're trying to take down the opponent's health value. And that's true for the combat side, but the negotiation side, your health is called resolve, and you are wielding various different other metrics like influence and dominance. You're playing diplomacy and hostility and manipulate style cards. I found it like, what the hell is going on? It's still in early access, so it has a present because it's just come out on Steam. It's been out on Epic Game Store for 6 months or a year, maybe a year. But it's still the tutorial. There is a tutorial, but it kicks in way after I'd had to make a load of choices over cards to take, and I didn't understand what on any of the cards. I have no idea what I was doing. Like, well, I'll have that then. But it hasn't really been a practical problem. But okay, so there are loads of things I didn't really understand, and the negotiation card game is quite different to any other computer CCG I've played. You still get things like Slay the Spire's intense system. So in Slay the Spire, you know what the enemy's intent is going to be for their turn, so you can react to it on your turn. So and that is present in this game. But in this game, you have a resolve, so you have your personal kind of resolve, but you're also constructing what are called arguments, and these arguments are these little things that sort of sit nearby you, which will have an effect, a bonus usually, and have their own resolve or health. And in order to get rid of those, the enemy has to get rid of actually direct attacks against them, and you'll do the same on the enemy. They will have arguments that you've got to defeat, and sometimes the arguments are actually related to the character that you're playing. So actually, this is where the game does actually reflect the conversation, and which is neatly done, but it's a lot more mechanical than anything that like Signs of the Sojourner is going for, because I started off playing, you've got these 3 different types of cards. As I said, you've got hostility, manipulate, or diplomacy. Diplomacy cards are green. Hostility ones are red, and manipulate are purple. And I thought, well, I'll go with the diplomacy because my character is going to be a diplomatic character. But that's not really how it plays out. Like, you're not, there's nothing really to be gained from being that kind of a character. You'll have you might have a stronger deck if you have mostly diplomacy, because they will have effects, particularly something called influence, which has a I can't remember what the benefit is now. I think it continually it does damage to their resolve at the end of your turn. I think that's what it does anyway. But you'll have more opportunities to develop that and protect it if you specialize in a diplomacy deck. But it's interesting where here in this one, the problems I had weren't so much with how closely it was resembling human interaction than it was with kind of my understanding of what an RPG is and how you act in RPGs,
Right.
Where you're kind of like, oh, I don't have to be a nice person outside of the choices that you get in the sort of branching storylines, in the actual engagements, in the actual fights, you just win, you just got play to win. But it's incredibly intricate. Like, there's so much of this game. There's so much going on. There are multiple characters that you can play as. I think there are 3. I've unlocked the second one. That second character popped up in my story as I played through the character that's the first one that you've already have unlocked when you start playing the game. Each character you come across, you can have a look at your relationships with them. As I said earlier on, you're tracking kind of how much they like you and things. And they also have a unique card that I think if you kill them, you'll get their card. And there are situations in which you can kill them without repercussions, which would be if you meet them outside of one of the urban areas. And there are situations where I guess the law comes after you. I don't know. There's so much going on. Like, I can't quite get my head around it all, because at the moment I'm just sort of buried in a kind of mess of cards that I'm getting. Just to mention, all of the cards upgrade as you use them, or most of the cards upgrade as you use them. As you upgrade them, you then get a choice over which way you upgrade it. That's another thing. They get XP. A lot of them will destruct after a time. So my instinct in CCGs is to pare down my deck, and this game is throwing cards at me, and I'm thinking, God, this is too many. My deck is, but then I'm losing cards because I'm using them up, and oh my goodness, there's so much going on. But I'm really enjoying it. It's really well written.
What happens if you kill a character that you can also play as?
I don't know. I haven't had an opportunity to fight that character. I think it's a carefully written RPG in the sense that it's quite controlled over what you can do. It's not like you're not in a 3D world where you can walk up to and hit anybody you like. It's quite controlled. It's very branching, but the branchingness is interesting of its own. You've got factions you can join with, and other factions will dislike you as a result. There's a lot of game here. There's a whole lot of game, and you on the title screen they show you all of in a few days' time another big update's going to be released, and after that some more. So yeah, it's super cool. I haven't got a handle on it, but Tom was right to have been saying play Griftlands for the past few months.
I might check it out. I have to say, I'm a bit leery of the way you describe the conversations there, because it sounds like they're being set up as competitions or basically ersatz combat.
Yeah, essentially.
Is that right?
Sometimes they're friendly conversations that you're trying to talk them into doing something. They're not. It's framed as combat, and you are, when you play a hostility card, this red card, it sort of, you get this sense that you've said something nasty to them to bend them to your will. But yeah,
I do quite. I mean, that's the thing I quite like about. Not that these games sound terribly comparable, really, but one of the things I really like about Signs of the Sojourner is that the conversations are neither competitive nor necessarily collaborative. They can be a mixture of the two, which is what conversations really are. And yet it still feels gamey enough to be compelling, which is an unusual mix. I don't know if But it sounds like your game is sort of more focused on making the mechanics of it richer and
yeah, it's finding in the idea of having an argument with somebody more things to do with CCG mechanics. I think I would say, like I think with a combat game, when you're trying to model combat with a CCG, I don't know how you would have satellite things that might be around you unless you frame it in some theme that's, that you're making sci-fi orbs around you or something. I don't know, it becomes more and more abstract in this sense, like, oh, I've constructed an argument and now they've got to deal with that argument and I can't. And, they're doing some really interesting things. So there was one person that I had to actually assassinate and I could talk to them before actually engaging them in combat. And that negotiation beforehand was framed in the sense that if I could destroy arguments that were not their actual main health, I would get benefits for the combat to come. So it's as if you've sort of intimidated them in some way before actually going into the fight itself, which was kind of really interesting extra way to play around with this stuff.
That sounds good. That sounds like I should check it out, along with once I get through the other 1,700 games I now have access to. Can I mention one other game that I played this week really quickly? But it's a game that I want Chris's insight on. I've been playing Mass Effect Andromeda, which is a weird thing to play, because it's a dialogue-heavy game immediately after Signs of the Sojourner. I don't really know why I picked it up. I guess I just fancied, because there was all that, Last of Us 2 kerfuffle at the end of last week. And I just I don't want to play that at all. But it did remind me of playing Naughty Dog games that I have enjoyed before they became sort of a needless exploration of human misery. And then I just sort of wanted a big matinee adventure. So I downloaded Mass Effect 3 and I like it. I have no idea why it got shanked.
Yes. Yes. I wasn't sure which way this was going.
I didn't know which way it was going to go either. That was a good. That was some good tenterhooks.
Tenterhooks.
God, yeah.
That's what it was.
You had me on them tenterhooks. Go on. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, no, I don't think it's like an amazing game or anything. It feels remarkably dated now in a way which I didn't really expect. And it's not the game's fault. I think it wasn't miles away from the standard of ME3 or anything like that. It's just things have moved on, and having played things like God of War and Spider-Man in the last few years, just the way that it presents conversations feels very crude now, which isn't its fault really, but it's a big stupid neon space opera, isn't it? I mean, that's all right. I mean, maybe opera is rather overselling it. It's more like fucking space karaoke at 3 a.m.
Well, I mean, there is only a year between Andromeda and God of War, so
really,
yeah. I mean, Andromeda 2018, Andromeda's 2017.
Oh, okay. Well, then,
just in case. I mean, I want to help you get the knife in. Yeah.
Thank you for easing the shiv in between its ribs for me. It's I don't really know why it exists in the way that it does. It feels very much like they just decided to do more of the same, and they don't really have a good excuse for doing more of the same. So that's why they need to shift it to another galaxy, I guess, and sort of start over. But it does feel like, I mean, I'm perfectly happy with more of the same from just like a consumption point of view, but narratively, sort of, in terms of where that series should have evolved, I feel like it should have had a better premise, really, rather than just do it all over again.
Yeah, not like
space.
I actually went through a period of time where I completely forgot that Mass Effect Andromeda exists, and that is a weird thing for me anyway, and especially weird because I'm like basically one of its only defenders, I think. And that, I think it's a really interesting folly now to some extent, because I think regardless of the many difficulties that it went through in development, I think it was definitely made with the assumption that we're doing another trilogy. And what I would say is that, and I don't want to give anything away, it definitely ends feeling like it has established the premise for a new trilogy, right?
Right.
And I think if you went back in time and you could say, like, all right, everybody, you're going to get to make one new Mass Effect game. You're not going to get to make 3. Then the place they set up for Andromeda 2 to begin would probably be where they should start. You know what I mean? Like,
I see.
And so it's
right.
and which is very similar to, you know, I think the comparison I've always drawn, I probably drew it on this podcast at the time, is that Andromeda is a lot like Mass Effect 1 in a lot of ways. It's sort of ambitious in ways it can't quite fulfill technically. It sort of, and it is having to do a lot of work of setting up a universe, and I think, as you've identified in this case, justifying the continued existence of that fictional universe rather than just reestablishing it for the first time, while also having its own stories and its own characters and things like that. But it does just about pull it off, and it's not an amazing game, but like I think it is more than the sum of its parts, and I think it's like it's sort of a weird thing to recommend, because I think it does have a good start, middle, and end. I think good ending. I think a satisfying and kind of complete feeling ending, which is not the case for every Mass Effect game, famously. And it also learns the right lessons from particularly Mass Effect 3, and the way that I think you're right to call it space karaoke, but I think the broader, like, accurate description would be it's a space soap opera. And I think they started by thinking we're making space opera, and therefore you just need to put soap in front of it, basically. Like, we're making space opera, therefore everything has to be super grand, and that's what people will attach to. They will attach themselves to the heroic characters and the dastardly villains. And no, actually, BioWare learned very much through both this and to Dragon Age that people attach themselves to the details and to the sort of day-to-day life of these characters. And the fact that it's a lot more soap opera. Mass Effect has always been more like TV, a TV show, like a Star Trek series where you just get to spend time with these characters. And Dragon Age is always much more like a novel, like a series of fantasy novels. They're not cinematic, really, in that sense, in the sense of cinema.
Yeah,
and
I think
Go on, sorry.
Sorry, I think you're dead right. I think it gets straight to the sort of warm camaraderie thing that epitomizes sort of the best moments of the series. Yeah. And it gets to that really, really quick and wallows in it in a way which maybe the others don't quite as much. And I think that's correct, because I think, you know, I mean, the sort of science fiction underpinning it is quite weak, really. And like the things that make Mass Effect good are the pals, it's the friends you make along the way.
It is, yeah. And they do and that's I think that's what's interesting about it is, in hindsight, is they, I think, made the very smart decision that they couldn't keep escalating or raising the stakes on the kind of, you know, galaxy-ending threat of Mass Effect 3. And Mass Effect 3 is very much a kind of, you've made all these friends and now they're all in mortal danger, deal with it kind of TV show finale thing, really. And Andromeda is like, actually, there's a lot less peril. There is peril, but there's a lot less, and therefore characters are more free to express a range of things, and they do. And there's some really good character stuff in that game, and some really, you know, kind of nice beats, and like
the protagonist, I think, is super likable in a way which I think is much more immediately interesting and characterful than Shepard ever was, to be honest.
Yeah, I agree.
I say that accepting that means that there is less space for the player to define the character, but I'm perfectly happy with that if the words that come out of her mouth are actually just much more pleasant.
Yeah, I really liked Ryder. Like, I thought, you know, and again, it's sort of like a shame that, you know, they won't get another outing, I think, because it feels like that's really what they were planning for. And I remember finishing it, because I think I've said this on the podcast before, but that game was getting so ripped to pieces when it came out that I think I instinctively felt compelled to defend it, partly because I just don't like seeing anyone's work get ripped apart, really. Not particularly when it's not for like there's no moral objection to the existence of the game. There was just a kind of collective glee in giving BioWare and EA a kicking, and that's motivated by a lot of things, but it is it is a true thing that, and you see this happening more recently with other games. You've seen this with The Last of Us as well. That sometimes these sort of broader critical showings align, unfortunately, with what the nasty Gamergate set are after in a given time, and that happened with Andromeda as well, where the critics have got bad things to say, but that's actually lending kind of energy to a hate campaign that's directed because of the progressive elements of the game. Exactly the same thing is true of The Last of Us at the moment, where there are critics with good, important things to say that are critical of that game, and there's an enormous bad faith contingent as well. And that creates a really horrible environment, I think, in the discourse about the game, because it's important for people to flag where their criticism is coming from, but at the same time, it's very easy for people to lump all negativity together, and some people do. And that was definitely happening for Andromeda. And so I felt compelled to defend it, but obviously trying to be a good critic and second guess myself and make sure I'm not just enjoying it because it's got the beeping and the whooshing that I like, and the kissing. And then I remember, like, it gets its other great crime is it gets better as it goes. So it's like, which is rare for a game to have like a better back half than a first half, but it does. And I remember being like 85 hours into it in the first week or something, because I was reviewing it in a hurry, and getting a DM from another journalist who was like, I really like this. Do you like it? Is it okay that I like it? Because like feeling really in this because the tide had turned against it quite as hard as it had. But yeah, so you sent me off.
I think
Marsh,
it's no. I mean, this is. I did want like a sort of somebody to bounce this off, because obviously nobody's really talking about this game anymore. But I think this is true of all BioWare games, because they're so big. It is really easy to take them apart, because they just they can't manage the quality control across the 30 to 80 hours that they take to play. And like, that is a bad thing. I mean, that is something that is a legit criticism of them. But it does mean that if you are feeling ill-disposed to the game in general, then it's very easy for you to just pick out examples where the lines that are written for characters are just fucking hot garbage.
Right.
Because there are a lot of them. I really wish they would make an 8-hour game, and they wouldn't. They would just. There's just a lot of conversations that people did not want to write, and there's lines that just don't make any sense. There's a character who takes her frustration out on you right at the beginning, and then she apologizes immediately, and she says, "I'm sorry, my face is tired." And you're like, what? Your face is tired? Do you just start shouting when you haven't moisturized? What does that even mean?
But
I don't know.
In the defense of but like I was thinking last night, because inexplicably we decided to watch Paul Verhoeven's Showgirls, which is honestly one of the worst films ever made, and it's so bad that at times it feels like it's been written by an AI, and after the fact you can't explain that it exists, right? And I was reading afterwards, I was fascinated by how bad it was, particularly it's Paul Verhoeven, right? Like, it's RoboCop and Starship Troopers, and how could the person who directed those films make this absolute garbage? And a lot of the interviews and things are just like, I just kind of did, and then afterwards I was like, oh yeah, you're right, it is bad. and so I do sort of wonder about, like, in a game with script as long as any big RPG, like, it doesn't surprise me at all that like some very Friday afternoon dialogue just stays there.
Yeah, and also, I mean, a lot of I think a more critical problem is that some of the conversations just don't make sense. Like, causally, there's no way for them to react in the way that they do to one another, and I feel like that's definitely like a problem of the way that that conversation probably came together and then got remixed when different gameplay requirements were asked of that conversation. They had the voice lines were already in the can, and they had to kind of throw these conversations together to get an outcome which was serve the gameplay but just didn't make any sense. And like, that stuff, those kind of problems go away if you're making a 6 to 8 hour game rather than a 30-hour game, I think.
I do wonder with Andromeda, I don't know this for sure, but it does feel like they were very unsure about how to begin it. And I wouldn't be surprised to discover that the first 6 hours of the game were remixed a few times, and that's one of the reasons that the stuff, it feels really wonky at the start, because it definitely, like, as soon as it really, it actually takes maybe 10, 20 hours to like really start. Which again is very similar to Mass Effect 1.
How many of those hours are just you slowly panning onto asteroids on which you then press the A button and then pan back out again?
I don't remember because time's a flat circle, but I spent a lot of time in that game, but like I genuinely don't remember. But yeah, like when it gets like, I think there was definitely a point when it was like, oh, you have to encourage people to get to this point because then it settles into its groove, and the content is templated because of the open world thing, but kind of acceptably so, and the cadence of like there's a mission, I think maybe 10, 20 hours in, that kind of actually properly introduces some stakes and a villain in a kind of formal way, and you get like, oh, okay, here's the game. And it's like, you know, that's definitely a problem. Like, it really is definitely a problem. But it makes me wonder, like, I'm much more conscious now than I was then about how games are made, and it feels like if they had teams on different things, then there's a team about, you know, game structure and sort of like mid-game narrative design that I think got it down really, and there's a team about combat, like it's the best combat in the series, particularly later on when you have all the abilities, and so they nailed it. And I think at some point there was some difficult decisions about how you open the game that didn't resolve happily by the time the game came out. That's my guess, but it is just a guess.
Yeah Anyway, not as bad as I thought it would be. There you go. Put that on the box in your deluxe edition.
£3.
It's going to be free, I imagine, on EA Play or something like that. Oh, we could talk about other EA news quickly. They announced Star Wars Squadrons.
What about that?
Oh yeah. Does that reignite your Star Wars tingle?
He's always got a Star Wars tingle.
I mean, I do always have a Star Wars tingle. There's no cream for what I got. But it's, I mean, I'm happy for EA Motive that they got to make another cool Star Wars game. It's a 5v5 multiplayer dogfighting game with a single player campaign. The scope of the single player campaign hasn't been revealed. But I got pals at that studio, and I'm happy that they got to keep doing Star Wars. They do make beautiful Star Wars, so I'm just excited to get to fly around in a different kind of environment. But yeah, just happy it exists. Oh, the good thing is they have confirmed that it's got full VR support. So that's all I really want from it. Is, you know, I think as soon as if you pivot it to thinking of it as a VR game, then actually it becomes even more exciting, because just want to sit in a TIE fighter cockpit and hear the nya sound from the inside. Yeah, that's all I want.
Have you been playing another game this week, Chris?
I have been enjoying very much, although I've only a few hours in, Desperados 3.
Desperados.
I also like the Desperado.
So yeah, this is that. Unfortunately, that I hope that pronunciation has not ruined this game for everybody, as it's ruined it for me. We're talking about Desperados 3. Unfortunately, there's a Vine I very much love where a woman sees a sign that says fresh avocado, and she shouts in delight, "Fresh avocado!" And that's fundamentally changed the way my brain perceives any word that ends in a do. So as soon as I saw that Tom Francis was very excited about the new Desperados game, and my brain went, Desperados, and it's going to be like that forever now, which is a shame for me and for the game itself and for its developers, me, or however many me's there are.
Oh yeah.
Who are the people who made Shadow Tactics, which is the kind of ninja stealth game. Which was itself a kind of a love letter, I think, to many things, but specifically Commandos and Desperados, which, if you've not played these games, they're thought of as RTS games. They're kind of real-time tactics games where a small group of commandos or cowboys kind of sneaks about a level, sort of finding creative and violent solutions to sort of open-ended stealth problems. I think the best way to understand them, though, like RTS, I think is actually a bit misleading. It's isometric Deus Ex or isometric Hitman. Like they have a lot of immersive sim DNA, I think, and despite the sort of zoomed out perspective, and it's really good, basically. It's really good. It's very I don't know where to start really in terms of explaining why it's good.
How does it differ to you said the name and I can't remember the previous
Shadow
game.
Tactics.
Shadow Tactics, yeah.
So I didn't play enough of that. The control scheme is exactly the same as far as I can tell, and it feels very similar in sort of structurally. So you're talking about being able to, mark an enemy and to see their vision cone, and switching between stances and hiding in bushes. You kind of control ultimately like a posse of characters, and you're controlling all of them, and you can freeze. You can pause to set up one action per character and then unpause to execute them, which creates some really cool stuff. And that ties into sort of special abilities that play off each other in interesting ways. So your main guy has 2 pistols, and he has a small exception to the one action when you're paused rule, which is that he can target his pistols independently. So you can technically line up 2 shots with him. And it's all about creating these moments where you sort of line up a situation and create these sort of multi-angle takedowns using different characters, kind of, whistling to lure people into traps. There's a doctor who has a medical bag that you can throw that enemies will investigate. And if they open it, it releases a blinding gas that temporarily stuns them, at which point you can kill them or someone else can kill them.
Oh, that tired Old West trope.
Yeah, exactly. The gas bag. And it's very like in that sense, just sort of mechanically, it's got similar to Shadow Tactics or even something like Invisible Ink, or indeed even like I can understand why Tom would be playing this because it's very much in his wheelhouse for a bunch of reasons, but similar to Hitman, but also similar to things like Invisible Ink and Tactical Breach Wizards and other games of this kind. It has a strong game layer where there's just a lot of really clear rules, and the UI is very good about expressing kind of who can see what and giving you time to figure out what the likely reaction to things is going to be. So the cowboys in the long leather trench coats are extra tough, and only one of your characters can actually one-shot them. Anyone who's wearing a poncho doesn't take any shit. That's a rule.
That sounds right.
Yeah, if you're wearing a poncho, you're not very easily distracted. So like, if you throw the medical bag out of a bush in front of someone with a poncho, they'll just say, fuck, and then walk off somewhere else.
It's surprisingly sweary, isn't it? I mean, it seems kind of unnecessarily so. There's people can say, motherfucker, all the time. You're like, all right.
All right, yeah, calm down. It's not Deadwood. So it's got this sort of thick kind of rules layer where you can determine all that stuff. One thing I really love about it is in the tutorial, it basically tells you that quick saving and quick loading is a core game mechanic. Don't worry about it. And I really love that they do that because it takes away, you can, when you've completed a mission once, you can go for like special, getting extra stars on the mission, like going back and doing it without saving, for example, and stuff like that, or doing it under a time limit. But they don't earn you anything, as far as I can tell. There's no XP or unlocks to get by doing that. It's just for the fun of doing it. And I'm really great. I think that's such a great kind of heads up kind of call from the developer to say, to cut off any possibility of anxiety about save scumming and saying, no, this is a game about this. Do this. Even to the point where if you go a minute without quick saving, it will just flash up a little timer that then counts up the amount of time you've passed that has passed since you last quick saved. Because it really wants you to approach these little moments as little self-contained stealth challenges. And there is some room for kind of recovering from accidents, but I don't think that's really necessarily the point of the game. The point of the game is sort of threading this really kind of elegant, as I say, kind of multifaceted route through a stealth challenge. And then Tom will almost certainly talk about this because he's the person who drew my attention to it in the first place. But the game has the most fucking banging replay system. It's so satisfying, and it doesn't need to be as satisfying as it is. Basically, when you finish a mission, you get the map for that mission laid out. And then you see colored lines which represent your characters move in like 32 times speed through the level, showing all the different divergent paths you took and with little splat effects where you got kills and takedowns and things like that. And it even shows brief divergences that are based on your quick loads as little ghost pathways that kind of thread in the wrong directions at times. And it creates this sort of like really, I don't know, really satisfying map of the the decisions you made, and there's like, it's really satisfying, particularly if you manage to pull off having two characters operate separately in different parts of the map in relative sync with each other, which is quite hard to do. And watching that happen, like it's just really rewarding. It's really cool. I really like that it does all that stuff, but without leaning too hard on like meta, progression and things like that in order to reward you. Just letting you reward yourself by doing it well is super cool.
Yeah, it's an incredibly generous game in that regard. Just feels like it's never judging you. It even prompts you after the first full proper mission. Is this too hard, too easy? It's almost like it's just saying, don't worry about it. You just play it however you like. It's really good.
Yeah, really nice. How are you finding it, man?
I fucking love it. I the quick saving thing is for some reason that feels just exquisite to me. Like the fact that it's constantly prompting you. The fact that it writes in the world during at least the tutorial mission, quick save now, just to get you kind of acclimatized to the idea of quick saving at a certain cadence. And yeah, that replay, fabulous. It was really satisfying when you see all these kind of red dots emerge, congregate in a single area, and then explode into little blood splatters and skulls because you killed them all at once with a piece of dynamite. I was just like, yep. I remember that.
Yeah. I was good. I did
good.
well.
Yes.
Yeah.
I won't tell you how many times I had to quick load in order to get to that point. But it is very satisfying.
Yeah. The other thing I really like about it is, despite being an isometric game, it feels really like it has a real sense of life to it, I think, in the way that the characters move, particularly because there's some, like, the way they, when characters are talking to each other in like a little cutscene or things, it's not the traditional Warcraft thing of like, we stand completely still, the cinematic black bars appear, and we listen.
It looks mocapped to me.
It does look mocapped, but it's like, I think it's the first case I've seen of mocapped, cutscenes viewed from quite a distant isometric. And there's something about that my brain really, really likes. Like, I really like dioramas generally. Like, I really like miniatures and sort of like as people know from my hobbies and things, but also just the feel of them. I love looking into a kind of a constructed train set diorama type thing and seeing all the details and not just the fact the first level is a train, but like there's something about like, not all isometric games tickle that part of my brain. And I think it's because of the fidelity of the thing. So I see game pieces on a board a lot of the time, even in something like StarCraft or Command & Conquer. Whereas in this, some part of me goes like, yeah, this is a little living diorama that I'm tinkering with and playing with, and I find that very satisfying.
You can rotate the view as well. So I don't know if certainly on that first train level, which is the only one I've played, and I've played a tiny bit of the next major engagement. I don't know if it becomes important to rotate, because you can pretty much play that first train level just using the default perspective and scan, left. I
think that's a case of them being lovely designers who anticipate that you won't do that. So the first level is kind of designed that way. The second level's less so, I think.
All right. So you do need to rotate in later levels.
I wouldn't say need, but like that's when I sort of had the feeling like, oh, I can do this, and I benefit from having done so. Like it's still laid out really nice way. Like, but yeah, like I think that first level is very deliberate in being quite linear and using the train, the length of the train carriage's way of kind of giving you really clear sense of where you are relative to the action of the mission, which is real nice.
I'm gonna have to play it.
Yeah, for the UI, man. I got so excited about the UI, I immediately had to go and tell people and now join Discord how much I like the UI, which doesn't happen all the time.
It's hot.
It's hot.
And there is a demo that includes that first mission as well. So
is there?
There's that's a low risk mission. I think it's a timed demo because that's what I did first. But yeah, it's great, tasty, fresh. Desperados.
Shall we do some questions?
I say yes.
I guess I have to, because I'm going to read them out. Our first question, and we should actually note that we received a real ton of questions, so apologies if we don't get to you this week. We're going to pick out a couple, because we're very tired, and brains don't work.
Brain not working. Brain gone now.
sometimes good question end in, can you think of a game? And brains say, no.
There are no games.
Yeah, so we're going to read the ones that we can think of something to say about, but thank you to everybody who wrote in. First up, Teddy writes, Dear Cravat and Blazer, as a fellow alumni of Bishop Wordsworth's, as I believe Chris is as well, that's correct, that is the school I went to, it is always a shock when I hear him mention Salisbury or growing up in the area. I'm from Shrewton originally. Congratulations. A bit of a lame intro into the question, but as someone who grew up in a small rural village who has since moved to industrial parts up north, I find him strangely drawn to pastoral games such as Everybody's Gone to the Rapture and A Short Hike, to name but a few. Do you guys find that where you grew up or your history draws you into a certain genre or setting of game, or are you doing all you can to escape your past selves? Cheers for cheering me up in lockdown and keep on podding, from Teddy. So,
I probably look for a contrast to my current circumstances. I don't know if I have a history of avoiding or gravitating towards places which are diametrically the opposite of Orpington. But, you know.
What is the opposite of Orpington?
I don't really know. I don't know if there is particularly.
Vegas.
So what is the game you're going for? Are you searching restlessly, looking for the opposite of Orpington?
It'd probably be like GTA Vice City or something, right? Like that would be it. Yeah, so I mean, I think I had the opposite life experience of Teddy, because I was born and spent my childhood in Liverpool and then moved to the south when I was in my early teens. But I have found that certain sort of industrial places in games have kind of made me homesick at times for Liverpool, particularly. And I got this from Dunwall in Dishonored. And which is interesting. I remember having a conversation with Harvey Smith about this, I think, because that city is very much actually based on London and Edinburgh and sort of American kind of coastal whaling towns, for obvious reasons, and port cities, and not Liverpool at all. But I think in the synthesis of those things, they actually ended up in some ways kind of reflecting aspects of that city. And so that's been a game that helped sort of help me articulate why I found that place so kind of engaging and wants to spend time there, because there's something about the docklands and the kind of industrial apparatus of big shipping that will always be really evocative of my childhood for me, because my mum was a customs official and would take me on the big boats basically when I was very little. So I'll always have, like, I think something about, like, you know, big cranes and big old clanky ships will always resonate with me. That would be my example of this, I think. I wouldn't necessarily that would draw me to every genre of game, but yeah, put a big tanker in something and I'll probably be able to smell it in my brain.
I don't know, because I like a medieval city or town in a game. And I think, but I don't think that's just because I'm British, you know, because it's such an archetype that's found in a lot of particularly American games as well, like a love of the old medieval. But yeah, I like twisted sort of alleyways and
steps,
and
multi-levels,
steps. Beautiful, yeah. That's what I'm talking about.
I think I like that.
Thief towns.
I think I like that because of an early love of Escher drawings, though, rather than any environment that I've actually been in. But.
Yeah. Yeah, because I would never actually want to live in, you know, I also like the idea, you know, you go in sort of Tuscan, real Tuscan towns and you see, you know, you can see sort of houses kind of pressed up against each other and, you know, built upon each other and up and up and up and across, and it's all fitting together very tightly. And I find that kind of romantic, and I also would hate to live in it because it would mean living really close to neighbors and, oh God, the amount of noise and, disruption. So I do like them in games because you don't get neighbors in games.
Mm-hmm. Our next question comes from John, who writes, Hi, Crate and Crowbar. I'd like to formally agree with Alex on the topic of bundle angst. I bet bundle angst would look good in German. I actually have a problem with sales of indie games generally. I find that I'm often reminded about indie games I might like to play when I get a Steam for example, notification because I have wishlisted them. However, I don't really like the idea of getting discounts for indie games, which seem to have a lower price point already because of various cultural features and consumer behavior that have been well discussed by CNC in previous pods. I think the creativity and the sheer labor that goes into game making is already heavily discounted, and I feel honestly a bit gross about it. However, what this means is that I typically don't buy the game at sale price and say, oh, I will get that later, and then predictably forget. Am I mad? Am I the only one who feels this frisson when I see a game on sale or a truly staggering bundle? On a more useful and less self-indulgent note, is there a good advertising push that isn't about sales? Thank you for the podding, John. I thought this was an interesting set of observations because we talked about price points in many different contexts, but rarely the kind of ethics of it. I think the obviously the most staggering recent bundle that's on everyone's mind is for such a good cause that you can see the all of the developers involved volunteered their work up for a good cause in that case. I don't think it's quite the same thing as a sale undercutting the value of someone's work in another context.
But I don't know. I do suspect that that's the effect. I know it was nobody's kind of intention. But
it's a matter of like you have to assume that everybody who did that knowing that they were maybe permanently devaluing something they'd worked very hard on, but doing it at a critical juncture where that, you know, the need was so immediate and the desire to take meaningful action so immediate that I can completely understand people fully consenting to that.
Oh, right? Sure. Yeah.
In the case of like, so I kind of wish Tom Francis was here to actually give some real weight to this, but I'm pretty sure that when games go on sale, and I know this anecdotally from Hack Mode, you make a lot more money than you otherwise would.
Mm-hmm.
In normal business, and the thing that's hard to split is the fact that that's always going to be partly simply the promotion. Like I think one of the interesting things identified in this email is that you can't tell Steam, remind me this game exists. Just remind me this game exists because I want to buy it at full price. You can tell Steam, tell me about this game again if it gets lower in price, and that's an interesting thing. Like we tend to, and this is the sort of, you know, the market, like this is what the question is asking, like other ways of doing marketing pushes that aren't just around discounts. That's interesting to me because I do wonder what component, you know, how big a factor is the sale price and how big a factor is simply a lot of people getting a mail out about a game that they've already registered interested in.
Yeah. It must be 50-50. I mean, you know, it's the nudge, isn't it? And the kind of the game that you play thinking, oh, maybe this, should I buy it this sale? It might go cheaper in a few, you know, next month or something, you know, or I'll buy it now. But I think, you know, part of the question was, is there another way to create that kind of weight of attention on a game outside of a sale? And I guess the one answer to that is launch, which of course, you know, launches remain a really important thing for games. And I think that there's one piece of advice that I keep seeing from people around games, which is you could put your game on for more expensive than you think. I think that a lot of developers, particularly now in a sale heavy environment, fear putting their games on too expensive. And yeah, the advice is that you could probably go more expensive than you're thinking in general terms.
Yeah,
and you know, and there's also an argument that kind of if you go up higher, it means you can come down lower. You know, if you can say 80% off, but your price is normally 20 quid, you know, then you're probably in a better position. But it's I think that there are lots of things going on with all of this, and I think one of my concerns is just player expectation. You know, what is the value of a game? You know, quite aside from what is a reasonable income for a developer. But of course, even with sales, I'm not sure how it all breaks down across everything that's available. Whether actually it's the same people getting most of the revenue in sale conditions, or whether sale conditions are what allow smaller games actually to start making some money. My intuition would say it's probably the rich are still getting richer. That pattern remains consistent, but I don't know.
Our next question comes from some dude who writes, "Dear Questions from Ravens, during this quarantine I've been going back to games I used to know, the latest of which is Armored Core. This is perhaps my favourite mech game ever. It has an excellent story about late-stage capitalism that is told exclusively in corpo-speak mission briefings and terse in-mission comms, and the most detailed customization of any mech game. You can even add weights to your mech to affect its centre of balance. It also has the greatest gulf between hour 1 and hour 100 of any game I've seen. You start the game walking around, shooting mooks and getting shot. You end the game samurai slashing anyone you come across as a flying, boosting, dodging robot god that never goes below the sound barrier. Can you think of other games that change so radically as you gain experience? Thanks for the break from this existential nightmare, some dude." Well,
the one that I'm playing at the moment that Tom Francis and I were banging on about last week would be, and this is across the sort of just a single run, but Monster Train, where you just become absurdly powerful over the course of a single run. That you're doing 20 damage in the first kind of at the start of the run, but towards the end you're just dealing thousands of points of damage as you're that's a game. But yeah, that's the kind of the one. Actually, there is another game this is a bit like that, Disgaea, the turn-based strategy game, tactics game, where by the end of the game you're sort of dealing, the numbers are so huge that they don't really fit on screen anymore. That's a game. Numbers are good, aren't they? When they go up.
I'd love to see it. I was thinking, because my answer to escalation questions is always Bayonetta, but I love Bayonetta because it starts at 10 and gets to like 23 by the time it ends. So it's not really a case of like feeling that you start off, we started at the bottom and now we're here. It's like, we started falling through space on a clock tower.
Yeah, I was just thinking, and then the escalation, we started off running down a clock tower, falling through space.
But you end riding a motorbike up a skyscraper that's also a space rocket to fight God. So, like that I think qualifies. But, circumstantial spoilers for Bayonetta there, I suppose. Sorry about that. But, I'm trying to think of other games where you start really lowly and eventually end up completely dominant. I suppose, recent fave Maneater sort of qualifies as this, in that you start as a little bull pup shot running away from crocodiles, swimming away from crocodiles, running, shot in a swamp, and you end as a teleporting lightning beast, killing hundreds of sailors as you zap their boats to smithereens and grab their, torpedoes out of the water and bat them into their friends. That's a good escalation from shark game to what the fuck is this?
Most of the Katamari thing being the kind of the ultimate expression.
Yeah, but even I suppose the key thing is like the key escalation that's harder to identify is where it fundamentally changes your playstyle. Because the definition of Katamari is like you're a happy little ball at the start and you're a happy big ball at the end, but you're always rolling.
The things that the stuff you're rolling up remains fundamentally the same.
Yeah, exactly. All is equal in the Katamari ball. And whereas, like, I think maybe like, I mean, it's maybe an obvious answer, but the Deus Ex and Dishonored games particularly, like I would exclude Hitman from this, because those games are about sort of ascending to a power level where your play style can change quite dramatically from the beginning of the game, where you're basically a dude, to the end of the game where you're a magic man. Dishonored is slightly different, I think, because in my experience, Dishonored escalates more in its environments. I mean, Deus Ex does as well, but I think I've always felt more like a kind of, fully kitted out Cyberman that can handle anything towards the end of Deus Ex than I necessarily do in Dishonored. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm just talking now. Talk.
That's what we're here for.
Our final question for the evening comes from Noah, who writes, Dear IOs and M dots, new console hype is upon us, but this time I'm actually feeling it. There was all sorts of talk of gigahertz and teraflops, but who cares about that garbage? Soon, games will be freed from the frankly archaic digital phonograph that is the hard disk and dragged into 2016.
Good Lord.
I think this will be a much bigger deal than people realize, I think, referring specifically to the use of SSDs on the new consoles. Streaming assets from slow memory to RAM isn't just about load time. It increases the size of games on disk, sometimes by a factor of 2, requires compromises in file size for just about everything, and necessitates larger and larger amounts of expensive RAM. If the PS5 solution actually works, it will make the dev's job much easier and would change how game worlds are designed. You could have things that the player could conceivably see within less than a second unloaded from memory if the asset is smaller than a couple of gigabytes. What techno-optimist dreams have you seen realized or crushed over the years, and did they actually affect games in a meaningful way? How soon will we embrace the new flesh or be eaten by robots after the singularity? And that comes from Noah. And just as an addendum to this, I did see someone on Twitter today talking about how the new Horizon Zero Dawn game will purportedly not need loading screens because of this technology as you run around a big open world. So that's cool.
Yeah. I mean, in terms of how it changes the content of the games, it would seem from the PS5's showcase last week, not very much is the answer. Like,
right.
I think it was one of the. I don't know if I was feeling particularly ill-tempered last week, but I think it was probably the most underwhelming new console lineup launch that I've witnessed since maybe the famed Ridge Racer giant enemy crab incident. It was just, everything was just very staid and predictable, and there didn't seem to be really any new sorts of games taking advantage of these masterful technologies. I am actually excited about the opportunities that SSDs will bring, and all of that stuff does sound good, but just there wasn't terribly a large amount of imagination in the
it was very it felt like
oh, it's another action game where you're in third person spamming robots and like, yeah,
right. And not to be like, everyone was like, are they going to reveal Horizon 2 or God of War 2? And it was like, which well produced narrative led open world third person action game sequel is it going to be? Like, and both of those originals are great games, and I can understand the desire for sequels, but there isn't a tremendous thrill in it, particularly because I'm thinking about, it's been 3.5 years since I got my PC, my current PC, and I'm thinking it might be time to upgrade again. And, that's great and everything, but like the consoles really are just hopefully more affordable gaming PCs now, really.
Yeah.
It's what they are. PS5, very big, just big boy.
It's kind of surprising that, if you sort of look back at, the PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2, PlayStation 3, when they were announced, they were accompanied by, frankly, misleading, but incredibly exciting tech demos from Sony, right? Classic demos of kind of ducks bobbing about in realistic water and T-Rexes and all that kind of thing. And there was something that you could get properly excited about and then be disappointed by.
A lot of the first-party games were really off the wall as well, at least in their premise. Like, I mean, if you think back to, Little Big Planet came out of really nowhere, and this time Little Big Planet returns, but as a canned adventure. It's just an action adventure game, and the PS4's got Dreams coming out, which looks incredible, but there doesn't seem to be. Whereas I was expecting there to be something crazy, and it just feels like gaming's lexicon has expanded so much over the last few years and this showcase of games didn't take any opportunity to find new genres within that. Everything seemed to be a third person action.
Yeah, I don't expect them to just try to set up a new genre though.
No.
I just want to kind of like sort of challenge that because I think what Sony need to communicate is, hey, don't worry, we got you covered with this new thing. And I think that's, so one of the underwhelming things about it is that GTA 5 is coming out on it, right? But GTA 5 is coming out, and if you own it on PS4, then you'll have it for free on your new one. And what they're trying to say, hey, consistency, everybody.
Yeah,
It's going to be more of the thing, and it's going to be more of the stuff that and there's nothing to be afraid of. And
right.
I think that was the message. And it's just that it doesn't really come with kind of, and this is why you need this as opposed to the thing you've already got. And I think that's what they used to do well. And like the people who are making that argument now are fucking Epic, which never used to be the case, that it was the middleware people that were selling the next generation hardware. That's crazy.
Right. I mean, but also like the message, it kind of reminds me of the Destiny thing. Destiny is also incidentally going to be free on PS5 if you own it on PS4, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, but it's similar to the message that they're having to get across, which is like, please invest in this new thing because it's going to inconvenience developers less than ever. Like,
yeah.
It's not, we're going to, we haven't necessarily like busted open a frontier that people can go and explore. It's like they're going to have to do less work to get the version of the game that they have built for PC and Stadia to work on this. And you're going to perceive that efficiency not at all. But on a macro scale, the audience, if such a thing could be said to exist, will love it. It's like it is less exciting as a big sell. The thing, but that's also partly because like that's the furrow that they've dug for themselves. And I think if there is a real weakness to the business strategy for the PlayStation and the Xbox particularly, it's because they are in the same territory as the PC now, and their offering is essentially to provide a more affordable way into that. Like Nintendo being Nintendo, like the Switch is the thing it busts open is a big chunk of design territory and just challenges people to go make sense of it, right? Like it's not about the technology, apart from the peripherals and the form factor of the thing and its kind of portability. And that's why it's so effective and so successful. Like I think it's maybe inevitable this console generation ends up being a bit like, yeah, it's fine. Because it's just that all they have to do is not fuck up moving with the technology. Like, because that's, like literally nothing matters apart from is this easy to develop for and get your games running well on. Like, what matters other than that for these consoles and their success? I don't think there's anything.
I think ultimately it's good news for PC because PC remains that and the Switch remain places where there'll be smaller, more daring, interesting, varied, places for games that can benefit from what's being put out on the big consoles, the new consoles, while doing different things besides.
Well, I think that about wraps it up for questions this week. If you'd like to send us a question, you can do so at questions@creatingcrowbar.com or tweet us at creatingcrowbar. All these recordings are uploaded as videos to YouTube, where you can find other stuff by us. The address for that is youtube.com/creatingcrowbar. Thanks, as always, to our lovely backers on Patreon. You can back us too, if you so wish, at patreon.com/creatingcrowbar, or you can simply join our lovely Discord community, the link for which is on our website, which is creatingcrowbar.com, sensibly enough. I am Marsh Davis.
I am Chris Thurston.
I'm Alex Wilshire.
Thanks for listening.
Harry.
Oh, yeah.